Stop doing this. It's not gonna fix your hip flexor problem. Hi guys, Mr.Physio here in Australia. Let's talk about hip flexor today. There are a lot to cover in this video, and some of them may be a bit confusing and controversial, but I hope I can deliver my message properly. So let's get started. There are many hip flexors, and I will show you all of them and discuss how you can deal with hip flexor tightness or weakness. Probably I will focus more on hip flexor weakness today. Let's have a look at the hip flexors in our body. There are so many: TFL, adductors, rectus femoris, and so on. Of course, we have psoas and iliacus as well. So this muscle starts from the front part of the lumbar spine and attaches on the inside of the thigh bone. And when it contracts, they lift your leg up like that. So if you look closely, psoas muscle is the only muscle that's attached on your spine. All other muscles are attached on your pelvis. Since they are attached on pelvis, they are more likely to assist the hip flexion up to 90-degree pelvis level. Whereas psoas muscles are attached on the spine, so it can bring your leg higher than 90-degree, higher than pelvis. Basically, psoas muscles get help from other muscles below 90-degree, but has to work harder above 90-degree. So psoas muscle is more active within the higher range of hip flexion, which is important when testing its strength later on. But when you sit down, you put that muscle into a shortened position, basically half size. And if you sit for a long time, that muscle is likely to get short and tight. And then when you stand up, the tight and short muscle can pull your spine forward like that. And that will create more arch in your lower back. And that's the typical scenario you might have heard of until this happens. Okay, once your lumbar spine gets pulled forward like that because of the tight psoas muscle, your whole body weight gets shifted forward as well, like that. So it goes like that. But of course, your body doesn't want to go forward because it doesn't want to fall forward. So what our body does is actually compensate through the upper spine. These forces can affect your body without your body turning into this poor posture. For example, you can still have hip flexor tightness without anterior pelvic tilt. That means probably your core is strong enough to support your spine in a neutral position rather than just going forward like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have hip flexor tightness. Your hip flexor tightness is there, pulling your spine down, but your core can fight back against it. The same goes for thoracic spine here. The force created by thoracic spine leaning backwards like that still can exist even if you don't see any excessive thoracic spine extension. So even if your hip flexor is tight and shortened, it's pulling your spine, lumbar spine down that way, that direction, against that stretching force created by that thoracic spine. So there is always this prolonged stretch on that psoas muscle. It has to fight against it. And if you put a prolonged stretch on a muscle, your muscle is likely to get weak. So the psoas muscle can't function properly 100%, and the other muscles, the other hip flexors start to compensate. And it will make that psoas muscle even weaker. Plus, we don't use psoas muscle that much, especially within that, the above 90-degree range. When do we lift our leg above 90-degree? Almost never. So the psoas muscle doesn't get used throughout its full range, which will make it dysfunctional and weak. So if you've had hip flexor tightness for a long time, there's a pretty high chance you have hip flexor weakness. And I will show you how to test it. To test your psoas strength, try to hold your leg above 90-degree without your hands helping like that. You can hold on to the wall and hold it there above 90. In muscle strength test, if you're able to contract your muscle against gravity throughout its full range, your muscle strength is considered to be grade 3 out of 5. 5 is normal. And if you can do that against light resistance, for example, against your hand pushing down, and you're still able to hold that position, it's grade 4 strength. And if you can do that against even more strength, like someone pushing your leg down, and you're still able to hold that position, your muscle strength is normal, which is grade 5. But if you have weakness in your psoas, you will notice your leg slowly goes down like that. That means you can't use your hip flexor against gravity throughout its full range. That's not even grade 3. You may feel comfortable around the 90-degree range because other muscles, other hip flexors can help your hip flexion up to 90 degree. So they start to support when it comes to 90-degree angle. So what do we do about that? First of all, we need to loosen up your hip flexor. As mentioned earlier, even weak muscles can get tight, so we'll loosen it up and strengthen after that. To loosen up your hip flexors, you need to find the ASIS, and this is my belly button. So between these two landmarks, you put the tennis ball. So you put the ball right next to the bone and press down like that with any object you can apply pressure with. And just press down and rolling around there. So if you press down like that, a little bit down and out to the side towards your back pocket area, like that, you can get iliacus. And if you angle more towards the midline, you can target the psoas muscle. You don't need to push too hard, just gentle pressure. So when you do this angle, you're massaging the iliacus, and when you do this angle, you're massaging psoas muscle belly. As mentioned earlier, if you put a prolonged stretch on your psoas muscle, it will become weak and dysfunctional. It's especially true for your tendon. Tendons attach your muscles to bones. It's normally elastic, a spring-like structure. It always wants to go back to its original length. But if your muscle is tight in the middle, that will pull the tendon away from the bone, and your tendon starts to lose its elastic component, elastic ability to go back to its original length. So it's always being pulled, and it will become dysfunctional. If your tendons become dysfunctional, it will be harder for you to contract and relax your muscles, because that's what your tendons do, contracting and relaxing your muscles. So your muscle, in turn, can go dysfunctional. And if you can't use your muscles properly, they will be weaker and tighter, and a vicious cycle starts. So we need to restore the muscle's function. To be exact, the tendon's function to control the stretching force. And it can be done by eccentric exercises. If you do a biceps curl, if you pull the weight towards you, your muscle gets shortened. And if you lower the weight, your muscle gets lengthened, but still being used. That's eccentric control. So we need the same thing for your psoas muscle. Because when you do a squat or when you pick up something from the floor, your muscle is in a shortened position initially. And when you stand back up, that muscle has to be elongated. But if you don't have enough eccentric control, your muscle still wants to sit in that shortened position, pulling your spine down when you do that, when you stand back up. That will create a lot of stress on your lower back. As always, we're going to start with simple exercises. We're going to start with your knee above 90 degree in sitting. From here, you start to push your leg down with your hands while pulling your leg up. Embrace your core, don't slump down like that. Keep your back straight and bring your knee up above 90 degree. So that's psoas muscle being used. And then keep pulling up while you push it back down with your hands slowly in about 3 to 5 seconds. In this exercise, you're activating your psoas muscles as you keep pulling it up, but the muscle elongates because you're forcibly pushing it back down. So your muscle is being used, but at the same time it gets lengthened. You can do it in lying position too. Bring your leg up toward your chest, and from there push it down while you keep pulling it up. You can also increase range of motion using eccentric exercises. So you're lying on your tummy with one leg off the bed and standing on the floor. And just embrace your core, suck your tummy in, and squeeze your glutes. So I'm working on my left side, and try to drive your left leg into the bed like that. So keep pushing down while propping yourself up on your hand. So start from here, and you're going to raise yourself up while doing this action. The first, tummy in, squeeze your glutes, drive your knee into the bed, keep pushing while raise yourself up like that. So that's it. Most of the hip flexor problems involve some degree of weakness in psoas muscles. That's why the stretching is not the key. Instead, you need to use that muscle. You need to restore that muscle's function or tendon's function to deal with that stretching force properly. Once your tendon function is normalized, working as a spring again, your muscle function follows. I hope this video gives you a bit of different insight into hip flexor issue. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.